There are films that inform us as fantasy role players. They feed our imaginations and make our gameplay richer. Who doesn't think of Schwarzenegger's Conan when they think of barbarians? How much have the films of Peter Jackson flavored your gameplay? I'm Dave O'Gara.
And I'm Sidra Grove.
And this is Fun Films and Dragons, a podcast dedicated to examining the movies that fuel our gaming experiences. Today we're going to start with the big one. We're going to talk about the very first Dungeons and Dragons film. It came out in the year 2000 with a budget of $45 million. It quickly lost that money and is generally considered to be a large disappointment to fans of the game and of cinema in general. So you've just watched this film for the second time in your life this last weekend.
Yeah.
What did you think of the movie?
Well, it's still terrible. It's less terrible the second view, I think partially because I'm not expecting anything. I know it's bad already. I'd already seen it, like, around the time when it first came out. It was a little more enjoyable because it was so bad. I just kind of sat back and, like, went for the ride. I laugh even thinking about Jeremy Irons' performance. It's on that borderline between, like, a good-bad movie where it's enjoyable because it's so awful. As a fantasy film, it does not hold up, especially considering that Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings came out just a year later.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I think it's solidly so bad it's good film. Every choice is wrong in this film, and I think that's a rare animal. Not in the ways that make it unwatchable. If the music was terrible, for example, then it might be obnoxious and hard to watch. But the music's actually okay, if a little hackneyed. It's fine. So the only thing I find that's really off-putting and hard to watch is Marlon Wayans.
Yeah.
But even he's in small enough doses. The cringe factor with him isn't enough to turn me off from this film. I've seen this film several times, and I enjoy watching it every time because it is so over-the-top bad.
It's fun to riff on. It's fun to tear apart while you're watching it. It's even kind of fun to yell at.
Is it a good film for fantasy fans? People who really like Dungeons & Dragons or were looking for something in earnest? Oh, absolutely not. I think if you come here looking for Willow or any of the Peter Jackson films, you're going to be very angry. Even if you're just looking for cinema, the storytelling is terrible in this film. It just suffers from a lot of problems.
I watched it for the first time with my gaming group, or most of my gaming group. We were not impressed, but after a while, we just kind of like sat back and rolled with it and riffed it and kind of MST3K'd it, because what else can you do?
Now, I'm tickled by the idea of a gaming group sitting down to watch this. And, take notes, guys. This is how Hollywood does it. The Dungeons & Dragons film, released in the year 2000, stars Jeremy Irons as Profion. You might know him as Alfred from the DC Cinematic Universe. He's going to be Ozymandias in the new Watchmen series from HBO. Many kids have grown up, of course, knowing him as Scar from The Lion King. There's really too many roles to name. He is probably the only member of Hollywood royalty in this cast.
He's also one of 9 actors to have won what they call the Triple Crown of acting, so he's got an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony. But he got the Oscar for Reversal of Fortune, which was like a decade before he did this movie.
That's remarkable when you see him performing in this film.
I think he's bad on purpose, though, which is, honestly, he's the best actor in this film, and he's the most fun in this film. He's not acting, he's overacting, but he's amazing. I love it. It's my favorite part.
The film also stars Bruce Payne as Damodar. Bruce began acting when his parents were gunned down in front of him in Crime Alley. Bruce has played the heavy in a lot of genre films, including Warlock 3, The Howling Part 6, and he's the only actor to return for the second Dungeons & Dragons film. Some people never learn. Justin Whelan is our hero Ridley Freeborn. He's a child actor with many TV credits. He's been on Mr. Belvedere, Blossom, and he was Jimmy Olsen on Lois and Clark. His sidekick Snails is played by Marlon Wayans. Marlon has a mountain of TV and film credits to his name, but he's probably best known for slapstick comedies produced by his brother, like White Chicks, Scary Movie 2, and Little Man.
He was also filming Requiem for a Dream at the same time.
Thora Birch plays the Empress Savina. She had just completed the critically acclaimed blockbuster film American Beauty the year before appearing in this film. She's worked a little bit, but word is that her father has essentially sabotaged her acting with his erratic behavior on set. The film features Lee Arenberg as Elwood. I always want to say Elward. The film features Lee Arenberg as Elwood Gutworthy. Great character actor. You've seen him in Once Upon a Time as Grumpy. He plays Pintle in the Pirates of the Caribbean series. He's been on Star Trek Enterprise and Charmed. The film also stars Zoe McClellan as Marina Pretensa. She's a TV actor. You've seen her on Star Trek Voyager, NCIS, Suits, and Law & Order. The film features some notable cameos, including Tom Baker, the Fourth Doctor, and Richard O'Brien, creator of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and a man of many TV and movie credits, including Dark City, Spice World, and Phineas and Ferb. He also played host of the Crystal Maze Show, a game show in England, and apparently he's referencing that show in this film and playing the same character in the D&D movie. Before I walk us through the plot here, I'm going to play a little bit of the trailer for you. Now, there's three things I want you to pay particular attention to. One is Jeremy Irons chewing up the scenery. Two is Thora Birch not acting. And three is Marlon Wayans being not funny.
In a faraway world,
all people deserve to be free and equal.
The child is not fit to govern an empire.
the forces of darkness
You can control dragons.
with the dragon army at my command. I can crush the Empress.
This has got to be some twisted magic experiment gone seriously wrong.
Have threatened to conquer a kingdom.
What can I do to stop Profion?
If you can obtain the Rod of Savril, you could control red dragons.
I suggest we lay low, let the whole thing blow over, come back, rob everybody.
There's one small problem.
Problem?
I kind of committed us to find it.
Let their blood rain from the sky!
Trust me.
I hate when you say that. Don't touch that.
Kill them slowly.
You finish the maze, you win the prize.
You'll have to do better than that.
They must complete this task alone.
You know, I love the way you track. I'll get Marina, you get the map. How you get the girl and I get a map? We gotta work out some new plans. I want them found.
Do you really think you can steal my destiny?
The film starts with some narrative exposition. We're told that despotic mages rule the land of Izmir, but the young Empress Savina wishes to change that, bringing an age of equality between commoner and magic user alike. And she can enforce her will because she can control dragons using her scepter. And so, in an effort to match her power, the ambitious Archmage Profion attempts to create his own scepter of dragon control, but he fails. A dragon slips from his control and he is forced to kill it. Something that he accomplishes with a surprising amount of ease, like he literally just drops a door on the dragon and it dies instantly. Maybe these beasts aren't the key to securing the kingdom, maybe we should just make golems or something. The dead dragon's blood spills into a waterway and sets a river on fire. A pair of thieves, Ridley and Snails, are outraged by the chaos caused by the mage's experiment, and decide to rob the local mages' school in retaliation. Now, without the ability to control dragons, Profion decides to try a more political angle. Savina must surrender the scepter to the council. Behind closed doors, the mage Vilder tells Savina about the Rod of Savril. If she can obtain it, she will be able to control red dragons, allowing her to maintain her power even if she's forced to surrender her scepter to the council. Unfortunately, this information is intercepted by one of Profion's spies. He sends his enforcer Damodar to the mages' school to retrieve the map that leads to the Rod of Savril. Meanwhile, at the mages' school, Snails and Ridley are lining their pockets with magical baubles and making a lot of noise as they do so. The mage Vilder hears the racket and sends his intern, a stuffy mage in training named Marina Pretensa, to investigate. She quickly captures the thieves by casting Hold Person on both of them at once. Apparently that's something mages can do now. Meanwhile, Damodar has captured Vilder and is interrogating him about the map's location. Marina hears his screams and rushes to his aid. Vilder telekinetically gives Marina the map and is Vulcan neck-pitched to death for his efforts. Marina blasts Damodar and his men and then opens a portal out of there. Damodar and his men follow them through the open portal as Marina, Ridley, and Snails all run and fall into a large pile of garbage. Luckily, this particular garbage pile is the home of Elwood Gutworthy, the filthiest dwarf in the kingdom. Damodar knocks Elwood's helm off with a crossbow, revealing his bald head. This sends Elwood into a rage, and he charges at Damodar. They mix it up a little, then Elwood decides to escape with the rest of the gang. Luckily, Elwood's home isn't just a pile of trash, it's also an entrance to one of the city sewers. The group dives into the collected filth of a dozen different races, and Damodar refuses to give chase. The next day, there's a reward posted for Marina's capture. She's being framed for Vilder's murder. Damodar reports his failure to Profion, and He doesn't take it well. He places a brain parasite inside Damodar's head to keep him on task. His task? Follow the Empress's tracker, the elf Norda. She'll be sure to find the thieves and the map. Our heroes are at a swinging public house where Elwood begins stuffing an entire turkey into his face, with hands still brown with sewerage. Marina and Ridley bicker a bit about the mage aristocracy, and Ridley stumbles onto the secrets of the map. He and Marina get sucked inside of it, but Damodar and Norda the elf have found them. When Damodar and his guards move in to capture the group, Elwood starts a bar fight by tipping over a table and yelling, "Bar fight." Apparently, Mead makes this crowd very suggestible as a bar fight ensues. Snails and Elwood make their escape with the map. Outside, Marina and Ridley let the group know that they need to retrieve the Eye of the Dragon from Xylus, the master of the Thieves Guild. The gang follows a purple three-eyed weirdo to the guild master, where they learn the Eye of the Dragon is at the center of a deadly maze full of traps. That sounds like a job for Ridley, who recovers the eye without taking a scratch. But treachery is afoot. Xylus wants the eye for himself. Before he can seize it, Damodar and his men appear, and a battle ensues. The gang takes the Eye of the Dragon and escapes in the chaos, something they're getting pretty good at. But Damodar captures Marina and the map. Before they can recover Marina, Ridley, Snails, and Elwood are captured by Norda, the Empress's elven tracker. They explain she's got it all wrong, and Norda joins the gang and they decide to track Damodar and rescue Marina. Damodar tries to pump Marina for information. When she doesn't crack, his brain parasite emerges to suck the information right out of her head. Now Damodar knows he needs the Eye of the Dragon too. They find Damodar's lair, which is guarded by men and beholders. They distract both the men and beholders by throwing a rock, and they sneak inside. Ridley and Snails split up. Ridley will rescue Marina, and Snails will get the map. Ridley does rescue Marina, but Snails is captured and killed by Damodar. Ridley gets injured trying to save him, but Marina saves them with some quick use of magic, and they escape. In the Mages' Council, Profion and Savina come to heads. It looks like a civil war is inevitable, as the Empress refuses to relinquish her scepter. Norda takes Ridley and Marina to the Elven village, where an elder elf, played by Tom Baker, heals Ridley's injury. He lets them know that men are very close to destroying the fabric of magic, whatever that means, and that if the Rod of Sevril is used, it could lead to disaster. Ridley and Marina share a kiss, and the elves give Ridley a magic sword. They travel to the cave where the Rod of Sevril is stored, but Ridley, carrying the eye, is the only one who can make it past the wall of force surrounding the cave. Inside, Ridley discovers great treasures and the rod, but the Rod of Sevril is guarded by a puppet or skeleton. The skeleton asks Ridley if he's worthy and warns Ridley of the corrupting power of the rod. As Ridley emerges from the cave with the rod, he sees that his friends have been captured by Damodar and his men. Damodar demands the Rod of Sevril for their lives. Ridley hands it over, and Damodar teleports back to Profion. Back in Ismir, the civil war is underway. The Empress's flock of dragons is attacking the Mage Rebellion. Damodar hands Profion the Rod of Sevril, and Profion frees him from the brain parasite. Profion summons the Red Dragons. Ridley and Damodar do battle. Ridley kills Damodar. Ridley and the gang attempt to take out Profion, but he is simply too powerful. Ridley manages to get his hands on the Rod of Sevril, momentarily succumbing to the rod's allure, as red dragons fall under his control. But instead of wielding this great power, Ridley does the wise thing and destroys the rod. Profion attacks the Empress with a magic spell. She retaliates by sicking a gold dragon on him, which eats him. With the war over, Savina declares mages and commoners to be equals. We cut to Ridley and the rest of the gang at Snails' grave, where Ridley fills him in on how the land of Ismir is entering a new age. Suddenly, a magical orb appears on the grave. Ridley picks it up and is told by Norda that his friend awaits him. The gang are transformed into beings of light and fly off screen. Thus ends the story of Dungeons & Dragons the movie. Now, we can spend hours picking apart everything that's wrong with this film. The goofy costumes, the terrible choreographed fighting, but I feel the film suffers from 3 poison pills, any one of which would have been enough to put this film solidly in the bad film category. Let's talk about the writing. For starters, this script violates the rule of show don't tell every 10 minutes, and that's not an exaggeration. It is told almost entirely through exposition. And I wonder if a producer ever sat down and listened to the script, or did they just start writing checks when they heard Jeremy Irons was going to be in a Dungeons & Dragons movie. We're introduced to these thieves, but then they expect us to get on their side right away, but there's never a reason to do that. The dramatic approach would have been to show us a slice of his life. Like, let's see how Ridley came to be who he is. Show us how he's kind to his grandmother or to people in his neighborhood. Show us what he deals with on a day-to-day basis. Let us see ourselves in this character. The action movie way to do that is to just make him such a badass that we hop on board no matter what. We don't really need to see that he's a human. We just think he's super cool. That's not the good way to do it, but a lot of sort of cheap action films will go that route. In a B-movie like this, that would have been acceptable too. This film doesn't do either. Our heroes don't do anything but fail for the first 30 minutes of the film. The mage is a bad mage, the thief is a bad thief, and more unforgivably, we're never shown anything to make us identify with these characters. We're never even shown why the rule of the magistocracy is a bad thing. There doesn't seem to be, even amongst the characters, consensus about that. When Ripley sees the river on fire, Snails goes to him, "Why are you always blaming the mages for everything?" Instead of the 30 different instances we get of being told that the mages are ruling everything and that there is inequality in the kingdom, maybe we could have just seen Ripley as a child working with his mother in a tavern. Mage comes into the tavern, sort of people disappear when he comes in, everyone's clearly intimidated. He tries to seduce the mother, and then when she doesn't want to go with him, he casts Charm Person on him. We cut to a couple years later. The mother is never returned. She just disappears with this mage forever. Or maybe they find her and she's been transformed magically and used up, or subject to horrible experiments. Ripley goes to the mages and to sort of press the issue, and they don't prosecute their own. Now we know what made Ripley Ripley and why he hates the mages, and we know why the mages are evil, and we got to watch something instead of listening to a bunch of exposition garbage. And that, to me, is the biggest problem with this film.
Yeah, I agree. The way the writing is handled, we're literally just drowning in exposition, and that doesn't even really work for a book, let alone a visual medium. The film doesn't show you, it just tells you, and sometimes it doesn't even tell you. It just assumes that you know that, like, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys and this is good versus evil. There's no stakes, story.
We don't know what the stakes are, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
We're told that the Empress Savina wants to bring equality to commoner and magic user alike, but we don't know how they're unequal. We know there's a council of wizards. Apparently the council gets to vote on things.
Yeah, they get to vote her out because that's the thing she's scared of. She's scared that she's going to get voted out and her scepter of dragon control is going to get taken away from her. So she's looking for a rod of dragon control. So if she has to give up her scepter, she'll still have dragons. There's several points in the movie when you're talking to the Tom Baker elf, when you're talking to the skeleton in the rod chamber or whatever, they both emphasize that this is unnatural and mages shouldn't control dragons like this. And at the end of the movie, you at least see Ridley smash the rod of dragon control, but you never see the Empress smash her scepter rather, of dragon control. There's no her showing that she cares about this equality that she's pushing for. She just makes a speech saying, "Hey, everyone's equal now because I'm in charge."
A high-level mage is almost a demigod, and there's just no way you can make a fisherman the equivalent of a demigod in society.
Yeah.
You can't legislate that. It just isn't something that can be. If they had some kind of discrepancy or inequality in their rights, it's never outlined. We're never told what that is. So it's hard to get on anybody's side here. I mean, we know Profion's a bad guy because he puts a parasite in his most loyal henchman's head. So, he is sort of an ambitious evil guy, but other than sort of the ambition of a couple of political nobles, I'm not sure what the stakes are supposed to be here. Because once again, Snails even says, "Why are you blaming the mages for everything?" When we look at the land of Izmir, people seem to be fed. People seem to be happy. People have clothing. There aren't beggars everywhere. There isn't filth in the streets. It seems like everything's working. And as far as making a government that's based on merit goes, you could do a lot worse than mages. You could be rolled over by a despotic warlord. We can't put the barbarians in charge. We've got the mages in charge. Show us, don't tell us. Show us why the mages are bad. Don't tell us why the mages are bad. Show us why Ridley hates mages. Don't tell us that Ridley hates mages.
Film is visual storytelling. There's no need to talk about what's going on when you can just show people what's going on.
And to make up for the fact that they don't show us, they tell us every 10 minutes, because we are told half a dozen times that the Empress wants to have equality. We're told half a dozen times that the mages rule, and that's bad for some reason. Actually, I don't even know if we're told why that's bad. We're just told it's bad.
Oppressive or something.
I think the second poison pill with this film is going to be the CGI and the over-reliance on CGI effects. There's a lot of CGI creatures. There's a lot of CGI backgrounds. At no point do you think any of it looks real. It's all transparently CG, and it's CG from the year 2000, 20-year-old CG, but it looked bad at the time. This is years and years after Jurassic Park, after Starship Troopers, and both of those films, the CG is 200 times better. I mean, I can't quantify it, but it's certainly the insects in Starship Troopers and the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park look real at points. I mean, yeah, they have a sheen of CGI to them, but they're not cartoonish, which is what you get in this film with your beholders and your dragons, which are sort of puffy and derpy looking. It could have been called Dungeons and Poor Looking Dragons. And backgrounds that look, maybe worse than backgrounds that you'd see in a video game today.
The worst scene to me is like that big dragon fight at the end. Everything is the same color. The dragons, I can't tell the red dragons from the gold dragons. I can't tell the cityscape from the skyline. It's all this sort of same shade of like ochre brownish.
Damodar's psychic brain parasite is a particularly egregious effect. It's just absolutely terrible. You never believe for a second that there's anything going on there. And it would have been very easy to build some kind of animatronic puppet. There were practical effects. The practical effects in this film are a mixed bag. Some of them are pretty poor too, but there are at least some of them that work quite nicely.
Yeah, the maze scene was a really good example of like practical effects. That was almost all practical effects.
Sure,
I feel like they could have merged them better. I think that's what Jurassic Park and Starship Troopers I think they did that a lot better. They blended the CG and the practical effects, and it made the CG more realistic.
Well, it's funny you say that because I know for a fact that on both of those other films, there were dinosaurs built. There were giant insects built. So when they did cut to the interactions, they didn't have to lean into the CG. There were shots they could get where they needed, a giant insect arm to go through a soldier or something, or a dinosaur to sort of leap into the shot. And they had them on hand. I guarantee you they never built a dragon for this movie, in spite of the $46 million budget they had to work with. When Damodar latches those tentacles onto Marina Pretense's ears, could have gone with a practical effect because he's out of the shot. They just didn't put that effort in. And I think when they had practical effects, they really misused them. There's a scene where they're in the mage school, and behind them they have cages full of little animals that you can barely see. They're on screen for 20 seconds, and there's all kinds of fantastic creatures in there that have animatronics in them. They must have cost probably a couple $1,000s, and they're thrown away in a terrible sequence where Snails and Ridley are stumbling around like idiots. What a great use of that effects budget. I read online, I took a guess at this film's budget as I was watching it. I put it at about $16 million, and I thought that would have been kind of wasteful. $45 million. I read that on IMDb. IMDb could have said that Robert De Niro starred in this movie. And I would have been just as convinced, because I finished watching the film. I didn't see Robert De Niro, and I also didn't see $45 million worth of anything. Well, and I think we need to talk about inclusion of Marlon Wayans in this production. And at least specifically the direction they gave him, or lack thereof, to sort of be a living color character, a character from one of his brother's films. And I imagine there is a little cross-section of people who play D&D and who really think White Chicks is funny, but I don't think it's a lot of people. And when it comes to humor, there is nothing more subjective than humor. There's no art form. You can listen to the Beatles, you might hate the Beatles, but you can hear them harmonize, you can hear that they can write hooks, you can hear that the songs are about things that are important or insightful or clever. When I listen to Marlon Wayans, I don't see any humor there. He's just not funny to me. And I don't know anybody in my circle that does think he's funny. So to see him here in a fantasy world of orcs and goblins, he just really feels out of place. Completely sandbags the film. Every moment he's on screen, you're like, oh, that's right, this is garbage.
He's basically a walking, talking anachronism throughout the entire thing, and I understand maybe a D&D film in the sense that you've got a party of players and you're transferring back and forth between the players and the people they're playing in this fantasy, then maybe you can bring that kind of behavior and that kind of anachronisms in. But we're not doing that in this movie. That's not what's going on. There's no reason for him to be like this sort of ridiculous character that he is. It's almost like the director was just like, just go and be Marlon Wayans.
I think a film like that can be done well. The Gamers 1, 2, and 3, which is done by, I forget the name of the studio, but these guys have put out very funny films about people playing Dungeons and Dragons, and that certainly can work, and there's certainly a place for that sort of table talk, that modern day speech. But when you're building a fantasy world and one of your characters says, I'm kidding, I just want to hit it. This isn't a fantasy world. This is the modern world with modern characters in it. We just happen to have guys dressed up as orcs standing over there.
And I can even, to a certain extent, give Marlon Wayans sort of a benefit of the doubt and be like, well, maybe he was doing this because he knew he was in a turkey of a film, kind of the same way Jeremy Irons does that, like, crazy, overacting, ridiculous, evil mage. But it doesn't work the same way. You can't be like Chris Tucker from The Fifth Element in a D&D movie. And he's so obnoxious and so unfunny. When he dies, you're not sad, you're happy.
I would say the film gets 30% better after he dies, once he's out of the picture. Because he does nothing. He's a thief that can't stop screaming and talking to himself. You know, in the middle of a burglary, he's screaming. He can't
even go up a rope. Like, without freaking out. Like, he can't make a 3-foot drop.
He's scared of heights. He's let's face it, the comic relief is never funny. And when you sort of crowbar or shoehorn a comic relief character like this into what is an otherwise serious scenario, I mean, 9 times out of 10 you want to kill them. He is the Jar Jar Binks of this film.
And the thing is, too, is we already have sort of a comic relief character that works a little better in the setting, and that's the dwarf. Elwood is like, you know, every single goofy dwarf
trope,
yeah. Exactly. But at least it's humor that fits within the context of the film.
Yeah, Lee Ehrenberg is quite good in this. I think
he's very enjoyable. He does the best he can with that character.
All right, so let's grade this film. 4 categories. We've got action, effects, acting, and story. For action, I gave it a 3. I think the action is adequate. We come from a generation that grew up with Xena the Warrior Princess and Hercules, so I don't think I asked for very much in terms of sword fighting, and this film doesn't deliver very much. But there is some fun stuff in the maze, and there is a little bit of, even if the effects are bad, there is some fireballs getting thrown around and some crazy spells here and there. So there is some action. How did you give it?
I gave it a 2. It grated on me.
How did you feel about the effects?
About the same, a 2. The CG is so bad. It's like a dirty sock in a small car. It just permeates the film like that kind of stench.
Yeah, that's why I gave it a 1. I can't get over how bad some of that CG is. It's just jarring. And like you said, it affects the entire film and makes it very hard to take it seriously. And in fact, if you were showing this to someone who is a fan of fantasy films, I think you'd be embarrassed by those effects. You're sitting them down to watch something that is quite obviously terrible. For the acting, I gave it a 1. So there is some decent acting in the film, so I don't want to say everybody's atrocious. From a very earnest grading perspective, I've got to give it a 1, because Jeremy Irons' Oscar winner is completely over the top. He's foaming at the mouth, he's jumping up and down, his eyes are bugging out of his head, he's gesturing wildly with his hands. Thora Birch isn't acting at all.
I actually gave it the highest score I gave anything, which was a 3, but it was because I really enjoyed Jeremy Irons over the top, like, obviously on purpose. He had to have done it on purpose. Everyone else was awful.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are a couple of standouts and some interesting acting choices that make the film worth watching.
Yeah.
Anyway, how did you feel about the story?
If I could give it 0 stars, I would give it 0 stars, but since our lowest rating is 1, then a 1. I mean, we went over this, how badly it was written. It's just...
Well, I can expand on it. In addition to breaking the rule of show, don't tell, the film just relies on a lot of contrivance. It's one MacGuffin after another, and it's a series of who's got what, who goes after this. It's two groups going after a series of magic items. As the heroes get there, one of them grabs the item, but the group gets captured or almost captured by Damodar and his men, and they escape in the chaos. That happens 3 or 4 times.
It does, yeah. No, that's actually something I touched on. Yeah.
He can always find them. He can always engage them. He can never really close the deal. And I guess there's supposed to be a tension there. But it doesn't come across that they're very balanced. It just comes across as sort of lazy writing. Where they don't want to change the status quo. I mean, if Damodar is competent and powerful as he's portrayed, every encounter he should be killing somebody. Oh, I guess we should talk about the dialogue failing as well. Because that goes under writing as also. There is some cringy banter between Marina Pretensa and Ridley. There's a bit where she casts hold person on them, and Ridley says, well, I guess this is the only way she can get men to come home with her. And she quickly says, I'd have to cast a feeble mind spell on myself to want to come home with you. Folks, my skin crawled off my body, bunched itself up into a little ball, and hidden my rectum. I could not handle how friggin' embarrassed I was to be watching this movie at that moment in time.
Yeah, if you look over the quotes even listed on IMDb, they're ridiculous. My personal favorite is when Damodar catches snails in his quarters trying to steal back the map, and he says, just like a thief, always taking things that don't belong to you. How Bruce Payne delivered that line with a straight face is incredible to me, because I couldn't just now. I was...
Yeah, that's almost Oscar worthy there.
It really, I feel like he should have won an award for that.
Yeah, that's not really just like a thief. That's a thief. That's the definition of what a thief does.
There's one point where I think Profion actually says to Ridley, he goes, not so talented, Mr. Ridley. The talented Mr. Ripley had come out in early 99?
Well, the books had been around for a long time.
Yeah. So just I don't know, it feels like kind of a dated reference, though.
Well, it's a stupid reference.
And that too. I even wonder if maybe Jeremy Irons just improv that line.
When I put our scores together, we get 1.5 average, which is almost about as bad as a film can be. But let me put a little caveat here. I think it's a fun film to watch.
Yeah, and IMDb gives it a 3.5, so they were, the IMDb watchers are kinder than we are.
Well, I think it's split. I think there's a minority of people like myself who really have a lot of fun with this film. I actually watched it twice for this podcast this week, and I enjoyed it both times. I can't not smile every time Jeremy Irons is on the screen. He's just hysterical.
He's so great.
And everything else is so bad. It's really a spectacle. It's a comedy of errors. I do recommend it in spite of our low grade.
Yeah, and I would too. I think it's worth watching. It is so bad it's good. I wouldn't say it's my favorite so bad it's good movie, but maybe top 20. Yeah.
Well, guys, I think that's all we have to say on this film this week. Next week we'll be doing the sequel, Dungeons & Dragons: Wrath of the Dragon King, which you can watch on YouTube. I don't know anything about it. I believe I've seen this once before, so...
I've never seen it, so this should be fun.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you then, guys. I'm Dave O'Gara.
And I'm Sidra Grove.
And this has been Fun Films and Dragons.
See you next week.
If you enjoy this podcast, you can also watch it on YouTube. That's at the channel Miniature Mashup. That's MASH-UP. There's a lot of other content besides this podcast on that channel, and with the podcast you get some visual aids. We'll put up some pictures from the movie, and maybe that'll help you understand what we're talking about here.